I'm Mark Boris, and this is Straight Talk. And I'm going to say something that could get me in trouble, but Zara Seidler, welcome to Straight Talk.
Thanks for having me.
You're the co-founder of the Daily Aus and journalist, of course, and author. What were you doing before the Daily Aus?
I was very interested in politics, so I had decided I was going to try and interrogate politics from every direction, from every perspective. Did a stint at Sky News.
Bit opposite of Daily Aus.
It was fascinating. I learned a lot. Then I worked in government relations, and then I worked for a politician very briefly. And through all of those experiences, I learned that there was one thing missing. No one knew how to talk to young people. Oftentimes when people say youth news, it's written in terms of like you shitty, entitled young people. Ours was, we're going to speak across from you. We're not going to speak down to you. We'll speak in your language. Something that they'll be able to understand, digest, and remember.
Yeah. People in your, I don't know, millennials or whatever they're called.
I'm actually Gen Z.
Gen Z. Okay.
Just on the cusp. Still claiming it.
You're like me, on the cusp of Gemini cancer.
It's basically the
same relevancy. But Zara Seidler, welcome to Straight Talk.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I know it's a soft spot, but I have had your co-founder in here.
It's a sore point. It really is.
Sorry, I had him in here first, but I can't remember. I think, you can take this back to him, but as I recall, he was so desperate that he just kept sending texts, and I thought he was the only person.
On brand.
There's the only person involved in the business, and he never mentioned you.
Well, then I'll go through this entire podcast recording without mentioning him.
Correct. Here's your chance to square up. You're the co-founder of the Daily Aus and journalist, of course, and author. And welcome to the Daily Aus studio. Okay, let's just talk. Zara Seidler, obviously you've got architecture somewhere in your family, because then we're very close to a very famous Harry Seidler building, actually.
Yes.
Just down the road here.
Yes.
Which stands out like a sore thumb because it's the tallest building in probably all of Darlinghurst. But a wonderful building, to be honest with you. I actually like the building a lot.
It's unique.
I wouldn't want to live there.
It's definitely unique.
I don't think I couldn't live there.
It's for some people.
Yeah, some people. Does a family like yours, growing up with the Seidler name, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think people...
Were you aware of it?
Yeah, no, I think people presume... It's always the first question I get. Are you related to Harry? And then the next one is that they presume I'm creative in some sense, and I have to let them down slowly.
But as you're an author, though.
I am.
A journo.
Yeah.
Journalists are creative.
I like facts, and I like, pragmatic thinking, and I don't know how well that is coupled with creativity. I wouldn't call myself a creative person, naturally.
You wouldn't call yourself an artist?
No, I would not. That is certainly not my strong suit.
But journalism requires taking the facts and creating some sort of verse that makes it interesting to read, though. Because facts on themselves, correct. Because facts are boring.
Correct.
Can be boring. To me, they can be boring. But if they're presented a certain way.
Like in the Daily Aus.
The Daily Aus.
There you go.
What were you doing before the Daily Aus, though?
It feels like a million years ago, but it was only a couple of years ago. I was very interested in politics. So I had decided straight out of school, I was going to try and interrogate politics from every direction, from every perspective. So did a stint at Sky News. I was the person that would attach the microphone.
Daily Aus.
It was fascinating. I learned a lot. I hadn't studied journalism, so I learned, tricks of the trade there.
Sort of like an internship type of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I did it for quite a while, for about a year and a half, and was doing the 4 a.m. shift, learning a lot about all the guests, how things were done. Then I worked in government relations for a peak body that was kind of in the health space. So I learned how you can relate to government there. And then I worked for a politician very briefly. And through all of those experiences, I learned that there was one thing missing. No one knew how to talk to young people.
Which is sort of the Daily Aus shtick. I know that's weird. That's your territory.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to go there just yet, though, because you're still pretty young. How old are you now?
27.
Wow. How old were you guys when you set up alongside your
he who must not be
co-founder? How old were you then when you set up the Daily Aus?
I had just turned 20, I believe.
Yeah, because it seems to be quite a while ago now.
Yeah. It was a while ago, but for a very long time, it was just a side hustle. It wasn't a business. There were kind of no business aspirations. Wanted to tell our friends the news. Did that for many years. No one particularly paid attention. It was only during COVID that we then were able to grow it and begin to commercialize it and make it a business.
Yeah. So take me back to let's call it the side hustle. Where were you working?
At that, I was in various jobs through that time because it was so long. But the last one, I was working as a lobbyist. So I was working with businesses, consulting with businesses to then engage government and engage the crossbench. And that was my day job. I was, very much on a clear trajectory there. But then this just blew up out of nowhere and I couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yeah, but a lobbyist, my God, at 20?
Yeah.
I mean,
I was at that point, no. So that was only a couple of years back. So we did it for a long time. It only became the job in 2022. So yeah, back then.
But normally a lobbyist, clearly you're a confident person. You must be a confident person because a lobbyist, generally speaking, you've probably been a politician for 25 years. You've retired and you've got all these sort of
networks,
web of people in a various department. It could be the Department of Defence, for argument's sake. You might have been the Defence Minister and or Foreign Affairs, something like that, and you decide to go into private enterprise and become a lobbyist, and you're being lobbied by some of the big American jet makers or something like that, and makes sense.
Yeah.
In your 20s.
I don't quite fit the bill.
No.
A young woman, you don't
and
naturally
you're a young
find.
woman as well.
Yes.
How did you do that? How did you wake up? How did you wake up one morning and say, "I'm going to be a lobbyist"?
Yeah, it didn't quite happen that way. I met various people through the roles that I had been in previously, and one of those people had set up her own lobbying firm. And her shtick per se was that she wanted to do lobbying differently, and that she wanted to lobby for companies, that she believed in, that had a value add, and that she was able to create something that was, she called it at that point, tripartisan. So it wasn't just a coalition lobbyist. It wasn't just a Labor lobbyist. It wasn't a crossbench lobbyist. It was everything. And so I was sold on that. And she said, come in and just help us build this thing off the ground. And so I was one of the first few employees. I learned so much. I was oftentimes the only woman in the room, about 40 years their junior, but I learned and I got to see up close what power looks like and how it comes to be. And I think learned a lot of lessons being in that job.
That's very interesting. I would just want to turn back one page. So are we talking, when you said a different way of doing things, not just the tripartite piece, that is having everybody on side, but are we talking about a process that is more connected to ethics? So an ethical way of lobbying or lobbying about ethical matters?
The latter more so.
Right.
Both. It was about that, we weren't just going to lobby for anyone. I think oftentimes it's the highest bidder and you go with them if they need help. When this firm was set up, the idea was that, you can choose who you work with and that you can do pro bono work and you can do all of these things to really redefine the way that companies and not-for-profits and whoever it is reaches government, because it is so difficult to reach government and to reach the opposition and to reach the crossbench.
I've often wondered about that, and I know it's a little bit off the Daily Aus topic, but if you don't mind, just indulge me for a second. So I've often wondered about lobbyists who could also be a corporate PR type organisation, but they're guns for hire. So 1 minute they're in the Liberal Party area, and the next minute they're in the Labor, or they could be in the Greens. What do you think about that process? Obviously you do that in the tripartisan process, but equally you can choose who you don't want to lobby for. Let's say someone comes on and asks you to lobby for gun licenses, not gun control, but gun, and let's say it's something you're against, for argument's sake. Those people who take on those jobs, the bigger organisations, the guns for hire, how do you think they justify the ends that they're trying to achieve for their particular customer or client?
I think it's really hard. I think that no one goes into it thinking that they're going to end up lobbying for guns or for whatever
tobacco,
it is.
Or whatever
exactly,
it is.
Whatever it is. Those are the companies that end up having the most money. And I think that it is, one of the biggest issues with the industry is that not enough people have these kind of ethical boundaries that they will put down and demarcate. I was so young in my career that I was not the person making the calls at all. But I knew from that point that it was just a very transactional industry to be in, and that was not really where I saw, my future or what I wanted. But I think that these people just see it as their day job like anyone else, and it's their job to work with companies to connect them to government. And if they don't agree with them, so what? It's a very challenging area to be in.
Is it? But does it have? Can it be justified? in a way, by saying that everyone's entitled to a fair hearing at government level. So you, sir, are entitled to have a fair hearing between all the parties in relation to what your thing you're trying to prosecute, could be tobacco or whatever it is. And all I am is a
conduit.
Conduit to those people. I'm not there making any moral judgment on what you do either way. A bit like lawyers. Like a person comes in, committed the crime, it's got to be, the right to be represented is the thing. Advocacy is the thing. Sort of innocent until proven guilty. That's one of our adversarial concepts in this country. Is there any way you can justify in the lobby program that type of activity, that type of mindset?
I get it, but I don't know if it holds up, because I think oftentimes it's just about who can afford lobbyists, like these not-for-profits and the people that are trying to do good and trying to get their matters heard. The reality is that it's just a lot harder to find a lobbyist who will pick up your case. And so I just think, I believe that everyone should have access, I guess, to government, and, anyone, any company, any individual should have access. But I think in reality, it comes down to who can hire a lobbyist and who can pay for them. And usually it's not the people who are out there doing the good stuff.
And how do you, because it's a difficult territory, but even with your own business, Daily Aus today, it's a difficult territory to work out what's good and what's bad. It's nearly bordering on how you were brought up, perhaps even religious mores into your world, what were you exposed to, and therefore I decide that's a value judgment. I decide that's good, and therefore I'm happy with it. I decide that's not something as good, it's against my own views on morality or ethics, better word. Therefore I'm not going to do it. How were you doing it then? We'll talk a bit later on about your business, but because are you an editor-in-chief, or whatever you call it, of the Daily?
Co-founder.
No, but who?
I lead the editorial side.
Lead it. Is a good way of putting it. So therefore, your own business can have a certain direction in the way it goes. What are the factors that influence, say, someone like you in how you make these ethical judgments? What is it? You've been in your childhood, or someone who you came across during your life, or is it social development more recently, or social development from the day you were a little kid?
Such a good question. I think it's changed over time. I think back then, if we're taking the lobbying example, I think it's a privilege to be able to say no in your job and to be able to push back. And the reality is that when you're a junior, when you're someone my age, you ain't saying no to anyone. I often get criticized. People will write things about why I worked at Sky News. I needed a job. I needed to learn the tricks of the trade. And I think that oftentimes it is those experiences that will shape the way you see the world and how you understand things. Today, with the Daily Aus, we have an amazing team of 16 incredible journalists, and it's all together that we are able to combine our lived experience, our values, everything, and to create a direction that we're all really proud of, that we think represents, young Australia more generally, not just my personal life experience or Sam's personal life experience. Nothing is purely objective. We all come to everything with a set of our own biases, but I think it's through consultation, it's through working with a team that we've been able to really set that vision that we're all really proud of.
So does it become a consensus? Is it like a majority rules, or how do you put it to a vote?
Well, if we're talking about the Daily Aus, every morning we have our journos who pitch stories and pitch their angles, and we have a conversation about that. All the editors talk about it, and we negotiate a line that we're all really happy with, that the journalists are comfortable with. It's always just a bit of a conversation, and not every time will we get it 100% right. I think we need to own up to the fact that we're all learning, but we certainly try to make sure that it reflects where we're all at.
When did you decide what was it that got you to decide that I'm going to do a side hustle called was it called the Daily Aus?
Yeah, it was. It's always been called that.
So what was it that made you and Sam make that decision?
It wasn't my decision. So Sam, he wrote on, we don't know if it was LinkedIn or Instagram, I can't really remember, saying, I want to start something called the Daily Aus. It's going to be a news platform. That was it. He said, does anyone want to join me? Apparently there was a really long line of people who responded.
Join me for what? To work with me? Or?
To do it.
Yeah.
There was nothing else to it. He and I had community connections. We'd never met. I had a whole lot of friends send me it. I was the only person who responded. We went for coffee, and that day we created what is now TDA. But back then it was just, how can we do things differently? He comes from a news family, news obsessed. I've always been very curious. We wanted to do it differently, see what we could do. In that little cafe in Bondi, we decided, let's give it a shot. We don't know what this will be. We don't know where it will end up, but it's worth trying.
You know, I set up a little business called Business Bullets, and I did it with Will Jeffries, who's one of the producers of the Ben Fordham show today. And we did it. We quite liked, and we'll talk about your formatting a bit later, because I thought it was great to have a format for business owners. It's just business bullets, like just, you know, what do you need to know? I have to say, it was very ordinary, terribly unsuccessful. We ran for about 2 years, cost me a bloody fortune. And in the end, I said to Will, no, man, it's not working for me. And then he went off to work for Ben Fordham. He took James Willis's spot at Ben Fordham's office and on the 2GB show. Our bent was very right of politics, because Will's very, very, very right. Very, I don't know if you know Will, but his dad's a lawyer. I know his dad because his dad's law firm represents me in some matters. But it was right down the other end of the spectrum to where you guys are, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But I was extraordinarily unsuccessful at it. It just didn't work. And I was funding it myself, and I didn't want to go out I couldn't be bothered to go and find investors and stuff like that. So we still exist, but we don't do anything with it. And I just remembered. You just reminded me of it. A reminder of how I sunk, I don't know, about 250 grand down.
Oh, goodness
down the
me.
hole. Yeah,
always worth a shot.
Yeah, worth a shot. It wasn't actually when I think about it. You want to buy it, it's available.
Yeah, well.
Business bullets, but you're going to have to change the whole direction. But anyway, let's get back to you.
Yeah.
More importantly, so you sort of responded to a call out.
Yeah, that was it.
Effectively.
Yeah,
changed
my life.
Idea where. But did you know about where his biases were?
No, knew nothing about him.
But didn't you say you knew him from a community?
We had connections. We had mutual connections.
Like
I had never met him.
Yeah.
I was like, your name seems familiar, but that was it. We'd never met. I knew nothing about him. I knew nothing about what he did, what he wanted to do. And we met, and it was just like got on like a house on fire.
Straight up.
Very clear that.
So you started doing a side hustle?
Yeah.
What's the first thing? What's the first thing you did?
We tried to build out a Canva template.
Yeah.
It was just
as in website.
No, just a template for what we were going to post.
Okay.
So we were like, we need it to be engaging.
Yeah.
We know young people give a shit, but they're not engaging. Yeah. Why? We think part of it is that visually it's so boring to read the news. So we built out something that was really colourful. And that was the first thing we did while sitting in that cafe on the same day that we decided we were going to do it. We started posting 5 Instagram stories just on the little stories thing that vanished after 24 hours. We did that every day for about 3 years before and after our jobs. No one cared. No one looked at it. No one particularly bothered to read it. But it was a great training ground for us. We learnt so much through it. And I think the consistency was building habit, and it was a great lesson for us.
So if we just go back a step then on what you thought wasn't working or didn't work with others, that is boring. The presentation is boring. Let's say the competitors.
Yeah.
Let's call them the competitors. It's boring in that the way they present us, their stories, and it's all digital these days. And I presume you wouldn't have been making an opinion relative to the actual newspaper.
No, so it was
digital
yeah,
content.
I mean, the boring thing is just a small part of it, but we thought that it was just not matching the way that young people were consuming information.
Okay, so how did you know that?
Because I was a young person, and I had friends who it was born out of so many conversations with friends. I would have friends who would say, let me know what I need to know about XYZ because I have a date tonight. And so they were curious. There was something in there that they were like, I want to know what's happening, but there was a step that was missing. They weren't going out to actually find that news themselves. They were coming to me to ask for it because they knew that I was someone that was always news obsessed. And so we became obsessed with that. What is the missing part there? If we know young people are curious, we know they want to learn about the world, why aren't they? And so, the solution, or at least the hypothesis back then, was that there were a couple of things. One, it was the way that the news itself was written. We thought that there was a lot of assumed knowledge, that if you didn't grow up with the Australian or the Sydney Morning Herald on your kitchen bench at home, how are you to know what a leadership spill was? You know, it was always written about but never quite explained. And so we took this idea that we needed to really step back, explain the news, explain the concepts, and make people feel like they were along for the ride, not coming in at the 10th spot. And then the second part of it was also, as I said, just the way it looked and it felt and where it appeared. Back then, people weren't doing social media and news. Those were two very distinct concepts. Social media was for sharing photos of your avocado toast. News was for a website or for a physical newspaper. And we said, let's marry the two.
Canva is about making it look pretty. Or not pretty, it's a shit word. Digestible.
Correct.
More interesting.
Yeah.
Colour, shapes, makes it more interesting. How did you know that being a news obsessed person, apart from people not being able to understand the news because they didn't know what a spill was, for example, and maybe they never got brought up like that. Perhaps you did. You got brought up that way. Someone in your household talked about that.
Yeah.
And apart from wanting to address that issue, how did you know that people? Did you do a survey? I mean, like just a couple of friends?
Absolutely not. No, that would have taken far more foresight than we ever had. It was really just born out of personal experience.
Yeah.
It was conversations with friends. There was a survey would have implied that there was some sort of business case to be made, which at that time there just purely wasn't. It was just we have a gut feel that this is what young people will want. Let's give it a shot. And it turned out to be right, which helps.
So you went to your friend, well, your friends, that's what we want. Tell me about what, because I'm going to dinner and we might end up discussing this with this dude or whatever, my friend, and this is relevant. This is current news, but I don't know what the fuck to talk about.
Yeah.
So can you help me, Addy?
Yep. And here we go. We will give them 10 slides, 5 slides, something that they'll be able to understand, digest, be able to access and remember.
Yeah.
And it's written in their language. It's not in a condescending tone. Oftentimes when people say youth news, it's written in terms of like you shitty, entitled young people. Ours was, we're going to speak across from you. We're not going to speak down to you. We'll speak in your language. And there you go. You don't have to spend hours reading the news. We'll give you what you need to know. And that's what we've done since day dot.
So given that you're in that cohort of people, you said something really interesting, entitled. What do you say about that phrase? People in your, I don't know, millennials or whatever they're called.
I'm actually Gen Z.
Gen Z, okay.
Just on the cusp, still claiming it.
You're like me, on the cusp of Gemini Cancer.
It's basically
it's
the
same relevancy. It's a bit weird, eh? But what do you say about this concept of young people feel like they have a sense of entitlement?
I think it's a lazy term. I think that it's a catch-all, and I think that it is used by people who don't spend a lot of time working in the communities and with these, demographics and with these groups. I think, sure, there are going to be some people in every single generation that are entitled. I think what Gen Z actually is misunderstood, and I think that it is difficult to understand what it has been like to grow up as a digital native, to have your whole life online, to have everything you know of the world on your mobile phone. And I think that oftentimes there's a disconnect between, at least generationally, between understanding what that does to a young person and their view of the world and what we expect of young people. And I think, when we're told that young people are entitled or that they're complacent.
They think they're entitled.
Yeah, or that they're complacent and that they don't care about the world. It's just about them. I think that what we have done has shown the opposite to be true. We can see that they are engaged. We can see that they care. They haven't been communicated with in the right way. And I think that just comes down to some of the differences in the ways that, we were brought up and what our world looked like.
It's interesting. I'm going to say something that could get me into trouble, but I think people who have retired and have accumulated a few assets, maybe got a valuable house that they bought really cheap 40, 50 years ago, and maybe because they put a lot of superannuation away because they're compelled to, I think they're entitled.
I would agree with that.
I think they think they're entitled.
I think that there is...
Get off the road. This is I've always been to this park every time for the last 40 years. I've always sat on this spot on the beach for the last 40 years. Who are these foreigners coming in, coming in at 4 o'clock, setting up a barbecue and cooking lamb, whatever they cook, lamb something or other, or who's these people coming to my park, or who's this person walking the dog without a lead in this no lead area, and this dog's bigger than every other dog. I mean, I see these people really entitled.
I think there's entitlement in every generation.
Everywhere.
And I think it's lazy to assign that to an entire generation. There's no homogenous block of anyone. You know, like another 27-year-old has a very different life to the one that I lead. You can't possibly share common characteristics and nothing else. Like there are differences, and I think they're often overlooked.
So do you think that part of your thing at Daily Aus is to work that concept over? In other words, work it to your advantage. So take the high ground in relation to this sense of entitlement, and actually let people, your readers who are younger people, let them feel as though that you're talking to them as not someone who thinks that they think they're entitled.
I think, it's about making them feel empowered. That's what our mission is. We want to empower them.
I hate that word, empower.
I don't. It's in my mission statement, so I'll just have to cross it off. Mark Boris doesn't like it.
Sorry.
It's cancelled.
No, I know. I just want a better word. That's all.
Okay, I'll think of a synonym and we'll come back to that.
Yeah,
but
we'll get our thesaurus out. No, but like empowered, like sort of gives them a sense of. Does it give me a sense of power? I don't know if we need that.
No, I don't know that it gives you. I think that it gives you a toolkit. Empowerment gives you options and a toolkit to engage with the world around you. I think that often young people have felt like they don't have that. They've been told a lot, they've had a lot of things projected onto them, but they haven't felt empowered to, engage back and have the tools, whether that be information, whether that be facts, whatever it is, to then go back with their own set of, worldviews. And I think that's what about empowerment that we are trying to do, is just give them those tools through news and through an understanding of the world around them.
Because the other generations are still fed the news largely through traditional entities, the traditional news entities using digital programs, like obviously, but also some of them are getting the news feed through Facebook and other places. And your generation's probably more Instagram, the way you write it anyway, the way you guys do it. You deliver it through Instagram. The people who are getting it delivered through Instagram, your generation, feel as though the people who are getting it through the more traditional formats think they know more about it than the people who read your stuff. There's a sense of empowerment, for me is not the word, but there's a sense of I know more than you. I've been reading the newspaper longer than you have. I've been reading about trouble in the Middle East. I've been reading about China, reading about the United States a lot longer than you. What would you know?
Yeah. Well, I don't even think that's readers. That's me. No, I don't even think that's readers. Like we've experienced that in the industry more generally. When we went to our first budget lockup, unnamed legacy publisher in this country said, it's the TikTokers. Why are you here?
The TikTokers.
I was like, I'm coming for your audience. But that's just what it is. Like there is always going to be this inherent bias to what was and the way that we have done things and against innovation and doing things differently. And we don't think about it too much. We just keep going because we know it's working.
But do you think your readers feel that too? So like your readers feel like, well, do you think they're asking themselves the question, is my information that I get from, say, someone like you as good as, in terms of quality, or as accurate as what my grandparents might be getting by reading a newspaper?
there are very low levels of trust in institutions in this country, including in media. And I think that young people are some of the lowest trusting, readers across the world. And so I don't think that they're really
lowest trusting. They trust the least.
Correct. And that's what we're trying to rebuild. So that's what we're focused on. It's about rebuilding that trust. And so I don't think that they're necessarily considering whether the information they're getting is any different or any worse or any better. I think it's just, can they trust this? And the answer is yes.
So you're trying to get them to rebuild trust in your format or you're trying to
media more generally.
Yeah, I was going to say or more media because I'll be honest here. I think just from what I can see, I think generally speaking, everyone distrusts media.
Correct.
And everyone distrusts government. That's where I feel I'm at today. I'm at that position. Like I don't know if I can trust what I read. Largely because, particularly on my areas of expertise, because I know that it's written by someone who probably doesn't know much about the topic as I do, because I'm in the area. Government, I definitely don't trust. I don't distrust them. I don't think that they're untrustworthy, but I don't necessarily trust their judgment.
Has that changed over time?
Yes, because when I was younger, I was never taught to to challenge that. I just accepted what they did as being trustworthy. But I also think that the individuals who ran government were different to the individuals who run government today. I feel as though they're more committed in a career sense. I'm more committed to their cause as opposed to today. I think I want to be in power.
Interesting.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not going red or blue. I mean, Bob Hawke and Paul Keating were just as great as John Howard and Peter Costello, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of policies. Policies that I had something that I didn't have something to do with, that I had some expertise in. Economic policy, for argument's sake. I just think they're both red and blue, both fantastic. But I don't see the same outcomes today. I don't see the great policy decisions. Even I don't see the unpopular policies decisions. I don't see anybody prepared to stand up and make an unpopular call.
Yeah.
And risking it all, because risking it all means they might lose power. And I feel quite deflated by that. And as a result of that, I therefore become less likely to believe what any outlet will put out that is quoting one of these individuals.
Interesting.
Because by definition...
So what do you trust? I don't know why I've turned this back on you now, but
yeah, no,
here
it's
we
okay.
are.
Well, you're a journalist. What do I trust? If it comes to... I don't trust anyone when it comes to areas that I don't have a great knowledge base. So if it's the war in Gaza or the war in Ukraine or all the various thousands of skirmishes in Africa... I don't trust any media because I don't know enough about the topic, and I know that media can be not misled but can be directed, and unless they give both sides of the story and they give it really plainly. But when it comes to areas of economics which I have a good understanding and other things that I have a good understanding on, I only trust myself. I'll read what they got to say only because I know I need to be relevant.
Yeah.
I need to maintain my relevance. I need to know what people are talking about. I need to know what the narrative is.
Yeah.
But in terms of making a judgment around the narrative or being convinced by the narrative or being influenced by the narrative, if it's an area I have expertise in, I very rarely allow it to influence me. And then in turn, I often say things about the narrative which get me into trouble, but it doesn't matter, because I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I don't care. I mean, like this show, I don't give a fuck. I mean, I can say what I want. I can swear. I can do whatever I want because it's my show, like your paper, like your news outlet. You can say what you like. I mean, within reason. You've probably got shareholders and stuff like that. You have to be careful. Or, one of your shareholders who I know who will ring you up and say, what did you say that for? But generally speaking, I don't have to answer to anybody except myself.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I very rarely, which is one of the reasons I was really keen to talk to you today, is I want to find out where people are coming from.
Yeah.
So that I know what light that your own personality and your own beliefs are turning on the news that you're preparing. Or, Mark, can you be convinced that Zara is completely agnostic in relation to what she writes or what she co-edits, if that's the word. And because I think people's personalities by definition are always going to get in the way of everything you write about, because you write about everything. Yeah. You can't write about any one particular thing. You have to write about everything.
Across the country, across the world.
Across the world.
Yeah.
Like for example, I'm presuming that you're Jewish.
Correct.
Yeah. So I wonder to myself, if I haven't read it, but I do look at your stuff on Daily Aus, not yours. I subscribe. I follow the Daily Aus, and I do look at the stuff, and I actually love the way you set it out. I mean, it's
Thank you.
very smart, very intuitive, very easy to consume. Simply, let's call it, I don't mean this in a bad way, but simply written. So that's
the point.
It's really important to me that I can get through it quickly, and you're just hitting on one topic.
Yep.
You don't have 1,000 topics. You just got one topic, then there comes another one comes through, and I got that topic. But I wonder whether or not if you and your co-founder have one bias or no bias. And I haven't read, by the way, anything you've guys written about it. Because I look at the Greens right now. The Greens, pardon me for being cynical for a moment, and perhaps even Labor, they've worked out there's probably a couple of million people here of Palestinian or Muslim faith compared to the number of people who are of Jewish faith. And maybe this is a cynical view, but it was one expressed to me this morning by a very senior person early this morning, that the Greens are going for one vote, they're going for the Palestinian vote because there's more of them. Now, I don't know if it's right or wrong, because I've never spoken to Shoebridge, I've never spoken to Band about it, I wouldn't have a clue. But I wonder, then all of a sudden I wonder, someone put that idea in my head, and I wonder about those people who are writing news articles, and I don't know what you guys written, but I wonder whether they're going for the same thing, or they're just doing something that's a bit inflammatory, hoping people will read it.
I think that this conflict in particular has been the hardest of any
to
news.
Position yourself.
Yeah, well, just rather to, when people are reading about the current conflict, they are not looking for fact. They are looking to have their own worldviews.
They're looking for sides.
Reflected, corrected. Yeah. And they're really looking they feel very emotionally on both sides, and rightly, about the state of affairs. And they are looking for something to reflect back their own, worldview and their own beliefs and their own values. And that is not the role of news. That is certainly part of the role of opinion. We don't do opinion. That's not what we do. There's a space for that, not our space. And so when you are presented with fact, that can be really confronting, especially at a time where we're seeing, activism journalism, kind of this idea.
Which is more opinion based.
Yeah, and I mean, it's trying to pretend that what you're doing is fact when in reality it's just activism. And we've seen it with like influencers and commentators and people who are going out on their own and positioning themselves as a media company or as something bigger, but it is just their own view. And so I think that when that is out there in the world, and we know that there are such low levels of trust in media, it's an incredibly difficult thing to try and navigate. And, a lot of people feel very strongly on both sides about the way that we have covered it. But I'm proud that we have brought the same principles and the same, levels of accuracy and fact-based information as that we have with anything else.
It's interesting, that you say what you said, because opinions versus facts. So when I was, this sounds terrible, sound like an old bastard, but when I was growing up, one of the news outlets in particular was an actual news outlet, never had opinions, just said, this is the news. But that particular news outlet today looks to me very much opinion-based, as do some of the other major news outlets too, and to some extent it looks like today all of us around the world are being asked to take sides.
Correct.
It's a time of you must take a side.
Correct.
Pick a side.
Yep, on everything.
Yeah, not just what's going on in the war, but everything.
Yeah.
Abortion, not abortion, making money, not making money, interest rates, inflation versus interest rate, like everything. Take a side and pick a person.
Yeah.
Whose side are you on? Not just pick a side, but who do you
and state it publicly
and be prepared to state publicly. And if you're not on my side, I'm going to come after you. Well, someone will come after you.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think that that's noise, and that what we're doing is news and not noise. And
so you're trying to avoid that?
At all costs. In one sense, that exists, and we know that world exists. And I think the problem is when people get into that world without the foundation of fact, without knowing what it is they're actually talking about. And so what we're trying to do is give them that foundation of fact, give them just the news of the day, no opinion, no commentary. Then if they want to go indulge in those conversations, fine. At least they're equipped with some of the facts to go into those conversations. I think the problem we have is when we have people entering, whether it be a political debate, an economic debate, whatever it is, without the foundation of fact, they go straight to the commentary space, and that's not founded on evidence. It's not founded on accuracy. And I think that missing bit is really important to fill. And so I don't think that there should be no opinion. I don't think that there should be no commentary. I just think we need the other stuff really strongly first before we get there. And so, I never say that the Daily Aus is someone's be-all, end-all. I know that they're going to consume other information, they're going to consume other media outlets, but they need both. They can't just have one, because I think that that's when we end up in those really kind of prolonged, evidence-lacking conversations. And
of course, we've now got fact-checking programs, all that sort of stuff. But even that can be biased.
We have a full-time fact checker.
Yeah.
So that was an investment that we made and we decided was important.
Yeah.
And she's an incredibly valuable part of our team.
But what about, and maybe be interesting, because you talked about the budget lockup. So, I'd love to have him here to ask me the question, but like, let's call it like Jim comes in and Dr. Jim Chalmers comes in and he's presenting the budget and he's not going to present a shit position. He's going to be, as election company, he wants to present a fairly good position, what he considers reasonable. And then he attributes their policy to fighting inflation, increasing unemployment, decreasing unemployment, keeping it at a good rate, he's going to present their policy as being good for workers because that's one of the biggest constituency probably, definitely one of the bigger funders as well in terms of winning elections or challenging elections. I can make numbers do anything. And I can attribute to the variables anything you like. I can build a model. I mean, that's my experience. I can build a model by inserting variables, which is a model basically just a formula. It's like an algorithm. I can build one that can tell you that the government's doing a great job, and I can build another one that's telling you the government does a crap job. And I can interpret things that the RBA says, that she says, that indicate that they're not happy with the government, and I can interpret the stuff that she says, just the words, by saying she is happy with the government.
Yep.
When you're at the lockup, what do you do? Like when you're going to present the facts as he's told you?
No.
What do you do?
That's the point. So that last bit about I can interpret X, Y, Z, we're not doing the interpreting. What we're doing is, let's take budget lockup as an example. So for anyone that's not familiar, because normal people would never subject themselves to 7 hours in a locked room with no phones. Most boring
thing in the world,
Exactly. But you walk in, you're given a stack of budget papers, your phone is taken away from you and you have no internet. And through that time—
Before they present the budget.
Correct. You are trawling through, a journalist is trawling through those papers, looking at just hard numbers. There is nothing else. Then separately, you have a stack of the government's media releases. That's them spinning. And this isn't just the specific government, it's every government spinning what it is that those numbers should say in their minds. And then come 6:30 p.m, we have the Treasurer get up and present the budget to the nation. By the time the Treasurer has gotten up and given that speech, our journalists are out. They are not there covering that. They have taken everything from the numbers that they need. For the Daily Aus specifically, we do about 10, 15 posts on budget night that says, here's what's in the budget for health. Here's what's in the budget for housing. We're not using the government's spin at any point. We're not even talking about the government. We're purely talking about those numbers and then letting people do that interpretation bit that you just mentioned by themselves. And they can go and read the Herald or the Australian or the Guardian's interpretation of it. And I'm sure they do those A+ lists and F for whatever else. That's not our place. We're not going to do that. We're going to say, here's the funding that's gone to this, this, and this. Here's where the funding is not. Off you go. You have the facts you need.
And then, so when somebody reads your facts, let's say they read it tomorrow morning, the morning after the budget's been delivered, because, whatever reason is, but they've already read the AFR or they've read the Aus, and they've got their opinion already in their brain. Do you think that those people will interpret what you've put in, the facts that you put out based on their opinion they already hold?
That's not our audience. The people that you've just said are not reading the Fin Review.
I do. I read your stuff and the Fin Review.
Thank you for being the anomaly that we can use in anecdotal evidence. Our audience, we surveyed them, 73% where they said that we are their primary source of information. They're coming to us first and then going elsewhere.
Right.
So,
and do they go elsewhere? Do you know
I believe so, yeah. We know that there is, a fuller media diet and we encourage that. That's excellent.
If for your age audience?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And there are you've had Hannah Ferguson on the show before. We know that there are people that would read Cheek, that we know that there are people that would read all sorts of things. They'd go and Capital Brief. They'd go and read that if if they're in the space. It's about
also been on the show.
Exactly. And huge fans. And it's about creating, a really sustainable media diet where they have come to us for those facts and then they're getting the analysis from elsewhere. So I don't think it's necessarily going the other way, at least for our primary audience. So they're not coming, having read analysis and then reading the facts. They're opening up social media. They probably don't even know it's budget night. They see a post from us, then they realize it's budget night. They read our things, and then if they want more, they go elsewhere.
So your business has been going for, I guess, about 8 years now,
7 years.
7 years.
As a business, 3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe, and originally you and Sam funded it all yourselves?
We actually put no money into it ever, but it was.
But you sort of self-funded.
We just spent no money on anything, and then we had.
But you use your own efforts.
Correct. Yeah. A lot of sweat. So much sweat.
That's money. That's currency.
And then we had someone else join the business, put in a bit of money. Then he's since exited the business, and we were able, to just build it, spending very little money until we raised a round.
So you did a raise. So,
we've done 2 raises.
And the business now, what do you talk about in terms of audiences? How do you measure your audiences and how they're going?
Yeah, so our fastest growing audience is actually our newsletter audience. And that was,
oh, really?
Yeah, that was an intentional play by us to diversify our audience away from being primarily social. We still see social as the front door. We want people to find us that way. That's how you discover us. But if we think of it as a funnel and, that is kind of that third party, not owned by us, rented audience, we need to bring them into our ecosystem. We need to be able to know who they are, and we need to be able to, have some of that data. So we have been able to grow that first party data audience, especially in light of all of the concerns between Meta and the government. We didn't want to risk anything by having, all our eggs in one corner or one basket. And so newsletter, we've got 250,000 daily readers. We've got a podcast. We've got an Instagram. We've got a TikTok, got a website, and then building something else as well. Got a game.
A game?
I've got a game. Picture this.
What is that?
You'll have to play.
No, tell me. You've got a big audience.
It is. It's an emoji game. So you have to guess. It's words written out as emojis, and it's on our website.
Yeah.
And so people come read the news. The New York Times brings in most of their audience through games, and we saw that, and we were like, we need to be able to diversify our offering. We're not going to do pop culture. We're not going to do lifestyle. Not going to do gossip. How do we keep people interested
and be a bit playful at the same time?
Exactly. And it's hard when you only do hard news to be playful.
Yeah.
And so our excellent tech wizard Nish built us a game from scratch.
Talking about playfulness, can we just turn our attention for a moment to Harris and Trump? So you guys are covering global news.
Yeah.
What's the state of play? How do you see it? I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Do you mind if I ask?
I don't know. I don't know. I think 4 months.
Is that poll based? You base it on polls, or you're just a personal view?
The polls don't really tell us anything. They say neck and neck.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to decipher anything.
But most people are too embarrassed to say they vote for Trump anyway. So
exactly. So if you're to account for that, which we know happened in 2016, then that would put him just ahead.
Yeah.
I think that I made a bet with my brother on the day that Harris announced her run that Trump would win. I'm not as confident anymore that it's a sure thing. I think he might still scrape through. But I think that she's run a better campaign than anyone would have expected at the time based on, what she had been like as VP. I think there was a lot of underestimating what that campaign would look like. I don't know the answer. I will be glued to my television like everybody else come November 5th.
Which channel will you be watching?
Oh, everything. So you've got to have 2 screens. That's why we have 3 screens in our office. You watch CNN on one, you watch Fox on the other. Somehow they're not even talking about the same thing. And
I know,
there you go.
You wouldn't think it's the same election. Actually, I had Joe Hockey sitting in that chair actually 4 days ago.
Yeah.
And Joe still thinks Trump can get it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think that there's a real chance that he will. I just think that he obviously would have been far further ahead had Biden stayed in the race.
It'd be a no-brainer if Biden had stayed on. But can I ask you this question then? How do you feel, not your news outlet, but how do you feel personally as Seidler, Zara Seidler, how do you feel personally about the fact that it looks like it comes down to just a popularity contest? Who's the most popular? Because it's not popularity because of policy. It's popularity because of she's better on TikTok and he's better on Facebook or something.
Hasn't it always been that way?
I don't know. It's become more that way now than ever before, I think.
I mean, I think that we don't engage on a deeper level with policy in the way that we might have when, information wasn't given to us in 10-second bites. But I don't know that popularity contest is a new or novel concept. I think that that's always been the way. It's just been through different mediums. Like, we had JFK and Nixon having their debate on the first televised TV debate. Same thing today. It's just through our phones and on TikTok. I don't think that it's new. I think that, we've seen this before.
Except that I would say that JFK was the first television president. He was better on TV than
Nixon. It was his charisma.
He looked a certain way. He had a charisma about him. It wouldn't matter whether he was blue or red. It wouldn't have made no difference. He was always going to win it as a TV campaigner. Trump was, well, maybe Obama, but Trump was the first social media president, and now and this is all about popularity. That was sort of my point about popularity, how platforms can build popularity. She's becoming the TikTok. She's now becoming the latest version of social media, which is, a TikTok president where you don't have to vote, by the way. You can, but I'll be compelled to vote because I'm watching her and I think she's great on TikTok, whereas Trump looks just like an old man.
Trump's not dominating TikTok at all. It's
no,
absolutely
totally.
Harris's space, but he's dominating other platforms.
That's my point.
Yeah. And I think that...
So which one do you think is going to give? Did you see some giving it?
We know that younger people are on TikTok. We know that they need to come out in droves in order to push in order to push Harris's vote up. But she has fractured the left. The far left and the moderate left do not agree on backing her. So that might be interesting. That splinter might not work in her favor. Whereas, Trump also is facing moderate Republicans who don't want to get behind him and are, since coming out like the Cheneys and saying that they'll support Harris. There's a splintering on both sides. I don't know where it lands. I truly don't.
Can you see that happening here in May or March or April or May, whenever it's going to be called next year? I mean, are we moving? I know it's a different sort of process. We don't have presidents as such, but we do polls, which is the most popular prime minister or leader of the opposition. Do you see that creeping into Australian politics and the voting patterns, the voting thinking patterns?
I think, look, the Americanization of Australian politics is not new. I think that we do gravitate more around that centrist mark. And so I don't see it at the same rate as what we'd see.
So who's closer to the centre then between the two here in Australia, Dutton and Albo?
I think that they both say things that would stray them from the centre, but I think that on the face of it, they are both They do have more common ground than I think anyone would like to admit. And I think that we're very lucky to have a country where we don't have a gaping hole between the two parties and they can find common ground. And, we can have state premiers agree with federal opposition leaders and the like. And I think that we're in a very lucky country as a result of that.
Oh, because I'd be just interested in someone like you switched on, especially for your generation. You're a great representation of a generation. And you definitely switched on to your generation because that's what your business is. Do you think there's room for a new party in the middle of it all? Because, we saw how well the Teals did.
Yeah.
For no real particular reason. They just took ground from the Liberals.
But they had a bloody strong campaign.
Great.
Yeah. And I must confess, I did work for an independent in my past life. So come to that with what you will. But I think that, that was a real moment in time. They were able to galvanise on many key areas that, as you said, the Liberal Party were not. Whether there will be another version of that, I think that there might be an assortment of independents that are more right of centre that I could imagine seeing in more socially conservative spaces. But we'd have to wait and see. We've still got a long time before the next election.
Do you think the likes of Murdoch and that still have huge influence on Australia?
Yes, without a doubt. I think it's
older
waning.
Generation or younger generation?
When you own 2/3 of the media market, that spreads to everyone. I think that social media is decentralising that power.
Social media is decentralising.
Yeah,
yep.
And that, little old me can build a company that can hopefully sustain itself. But I don't think that the power of Murdoch or Nine in this country can be underestimated. I think it's very difficult to be a new player when there are such entrenched concentrations of power. But that's why we're doing it. We want to be able to change that. We think that the more people in the market, the better.
But doesn't your generation, say up to 30, and I'm suspecting from our early part of the conversation, you're like sort of closing that gap to 30, but not there. Isn't that just a matter of time? Because very few people under the age of 30 even read a newspaper. Like
a physical newspaper.
Or even a lot of them don't even subscribe to the traditional newspapers, digital platforms.
Yeah.
And so over time, if you hang in here long enough, you'll become the traditional digital news for generations to come.
Well, I think that when we're talking about again, I don't want to create a homogenous group. Regional and rural young people will have access to a Murdoch paper much easier than anyone else would.
Because mum and dad probably buy
it. And so I think nothing can be grouped as a whole. Yeah. But no, we want to keep innovating. We want to create – we don't want to age up with our audience. We want to create a space for young people. We think they're the ones who are underserved. I think as you get older, there are many options as to where you can access the news. We think that the stories of young people, the housing market, whatever it is, we can tell those stories well, and we want to continue to do that.
So what you must do these surveys or polls, but what are the big issues, apart from the obvious stuff like environment and DV and all those sorts of things that are sort of specific? Is cost of living the biggest issue?
Yes.
For your audience?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we've seen that change over time. It was climate and it is now cost of living.
Right.
Specifically cracking into the housing market and rental prices. We know that young people can't afford homes. We know that they're giving up on any aspiration of owning a home.
Oh, really?
And yeah, there is this like lifetime commitment to renting that our generation is just kind of feeling like that is the only way because of what they're looking at and what they're seeing. And so I think that's the angle of the cost of living crisis that is most poignant, I guess, in our demographic, more so than anything else, I'd say.
So as your news outlet gets older and as you get older, you're going to have this dichotomy or this sort of confluence of events where you're trying to retain those people who you already got who are getting older, who've got different views.
Yeah.
And then you're going to try and bring in, recruit those new people who've got totally different ideas to the people who are, say, 35.
Excellent. Sounds like a contest of ideas to me.
Yeah, it's a contest of ideas. How do you approach that? How do you approach it? Because you're no longer how do you stay in contact?
You're calling me old already at 27?
But when you're 35 and all your 27-year-olds who follow your outlet now are 35.
Yeah.
And obviously that's a stupid thing because some of them are already probably going to be 35. Some of them might be 40 then, but doesn't matter.
For argument's sake.
Just for argument's sake. But then all of a sudden you want to stick to your original plan. You want to get 19, 20-year-olds. How will you bridge that gap? How will Zara Seidler bridge that gap?
It's an excellent question. We are recruiting the next leaders of the Daily Aus. We have 20-year-olds in our company who are still at university, and instead of going into legacy publishers, they're coming to work for us, and they're learning strategy. They're learning everything there is to know about building a company from the ground up. And that means that, at the time where I'm no longer the right leader, we've got a pool full of incredible, young, talented people who have been here since day dot, and I'll know when it's my time.
So Sarah and Sam will be the major shareholders. Is there a risk that you're going to say, hang on a minute, there's no way in the world will I allow this group of 20-year-olds to influence the outcomes of what we've created over let's call it a 20-year period. Murdoch-like. I mean, how do you resist that process? Because I'm not going to let you fuck up what I've created over the last 10, 15 years.
It's all about having the right people in the room. And like the people that we have
people
in
think
our
the way
room,
you think, or
no, just again, different life experiences. Like we have a newsroom that genuinely reflects the diversity of the Australian experience. We have people from all walks of life, and they bring with them all sorts of ideas and whatever else. And they know what works for different audiences. It's about finding the right platforms. Instagram's not going to be the dominant platform for much longer. Where else are we looking for young people? Where are we meeting them? What are we doing for them? How are we bringing them information? And I think we're okay in the sense that you were just highlighting because we don't do opinion, because we don't do commentary. So it's never been the Zara and Sam show. It's always been about let the facts do the talking and take it from there. And that will continue to be the way.
I wish I was young enough to say that in 30 years' time, assuming you don't sell this to somebody, but in 30 years' time, maybe I could get there, maybe not. But in 30 years' time, I could be sitting here across from Zara and say, Zara, do you remember 30 years ago when we had this conversation?
Well, it's funny you say that because Sam and I often laugh. We wanted to do things really differently. We said we were, going to do things differently from day dot. And one of the things we did was get up at a conference and say, we'll never do advertising. And then that was the day we learned to never say never. And our business is predominantly advertising based.
Yeah, because that's how you got to make money.
Got to make money.
You got to pay people.
We were lovely, naive, ignorant 20-something-year-olds who thought there's this magic button that makes you a commercial business. Just don't quite know what it is.
Without any revenue.
Exactly.
And I'm not, by the way, I'm not saying that about 30 years' time in a cynical way. I'm actually just really curious to see
you and me both.
How it all rolls out. And,
you and me both.
And, whether or not you sort of restructure the business and, put in non-voting shares and voting shares and then
change my name to Murdoch and then there you go.
No. I don't see that happening, but how you keep in touch with the younger generation?
It'll be a challenge.
The younger generation. Yep. In 30 years' time, there'll be, because I see generations now as 10-year periods, not they used to be like 25, 10-year periods. So when you're 40, you'll be in the 40 to 50-year-old generation. There'll be a 40 to 30 and be a 30 to 20.
Yeah.
There'll be two generations before you, below you, so to speak. And I'm just so curious to see how you maintain your position, because by then you'll be earning millions and millions of dollars every year, and you'll be living in Point Piper. You'll be living in Point Piper, and you'll have a yacht.
Yeah. I've always heard that media is a really lucrative business. If you're one person and one person only.
Well, but I'm curious to see how it's going. And I want to say to you that I think the way you have formatted your news is really, really good.
Thank you.
I think it's brilliant. Really, really is brilliant. So brilliant, I actually tried to copy you in the greatest form. As you say, the greatest form of admiration is copying somebody, but it didn't work out in our case. That's one. Two, I think that the process of picking an audience and sticking to that and just being facts, I like that because that's how news originally was done for me. But I think there's going to be lots of challenges. You've got some behemoths that you're taking on who are going to try and steal your position no matter what.
Yep.
It's never going to stop.
No.
And good on you. Brave, tough.
Got to try.
But also brilliant.
Appreciate it.
Really good you come in. Say hello to Sam for me.
Oh, I will. Thanks for having me.
Sam who?